Hi, this is my review of The Bleak Harvest. This is a horror-themed adventure for characters around 8th to 9th level for the Pathfinder role-playing game, and it's also compatible with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. However, just calling it a horror-themed adventure doesn't feel exactly right. It's more than that, it's an interesting blend. It feels a bit Lovecraftian, but also there's a bit of Hammer horror in there. And it's quite reminiscent of Ravenloft. It feels at times, it felt a bit like a tribute to the Bleak House of that adventure featuring Van Richten. Now let's talk about the quality of the PDF. The quality is great, excellent. Everything is well organized and written. The graphic design, layout, and the illustrations are also quite appropriate. It feels a bit like the entire theme is centered around a downward spiral towards madness. There are some dangers, some physical dangers, but the real problem lies in becoming insane. There are also maps, and all of the pertinent information related to either Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition or the Pathfinder role-playing game is quite easy to tell apart, so you will have no trouble at all navigating and using the information in this PDF. Now let's talk about the contents. The basic premise is somewhat tragic. There is this man known as Diokar Feudo. He was an acolyte of a minor temple. However, he suffered a series of tragedies, and the worst thing of all is that his wife Fiona died during childbirth, so both his wife and his unborn child were lost, and the clerics, the priests, couldn't do anything to save them. So Diokar became a bit insane. He started losing his mind, becoming more and more pessimistic, so he started to fail at his duties at the temple, and even though the priests tried to help him on his way to recovery, he simply couldn't get back up from that terrible tragedy. So he became homeless, he became a bit of a bum. He started to lose all hope, and he became quite resentful that those priests couldn't save his wife and his unborn child. He started to look at healers as some sort of evil presence in the world that gave despair rather than hope. So he started to listen to this voice from the woods. This voice identified itself as the Lord of the Wood, and he promised him revenge and power and even the resurrection or recovery of his family if he would only do the Lord of the Wood's will. So the Lord of the Wood, that is actually Shuv Nigorath, you know, the goat of 1,000 young, it convinced Diokar to go into Willowbrook Sanitarium and task him with turning all of the mental patients towards the cult of the Lord of the Wood, which is Shuv Nigorath, actually. So Diokar went into this sanitarium and started working his insidious magic to bend everyone to the will of Shuv Nigorath. Even the staff, the doctor and the nurse, became somewhat twisted, not entirely insane and not under the command of the Lord of the Wood, but they were tainted by the ritual proceedings of Diokar. So the patients and the staff of the sanitarium are in danger. But this is not what draws the characters towards this particular adventure. There is a very important person in this sanitarium, a member of the nobility. So the characters are tasked to find out what is going on in this sanitarium and what has happened with this duke that is being taken care of in the sanitarium, because other people have been sent to this place of mental healing to try to find out the destiny or the fate of the duke, but none have returned. So it is up to the player characters to see what is going on in this place of madness, horror, and decay. There are other adventure hooks, not just the characters being recruited by the king, to find out what is going on with this sanitarium and the patient. There are also, for example, if the characters are a bit more mercenary, they could hear about the sanitarium and they could go into this place looking if there is something of worth or value in there. Or perhaps a member of the party or former member or someone related to the party of adventurers is one of the patients in the sanitarium, so now the player characters need to find out what is going on, why there is a lack of communication, why they do not have any clue at all what is going on in this Willowbrook sanitarium. Once the characters get to the site, they will see that there are many dangers, not only physical and mental, but also magical. It is recommended that the party of adventurers is comprised of different character classes, especially those that are skilled in magic, because Diokar has been quite busy placing the mark of Shuv-Niggurath around the entire site. And these marks, not only are they somewhat difficult to find out, you'll have to carry out some sort of investigation on your own to see the location of different marks. It's also quite difficult to remove the marks, and there is a danger of different nasty magical effects being triggered by these marks of Shuv-Niggurath. So the characters really have to be prepared for combat, but also to deal with these magical hazards, as well as dealing with their own possibility of going insane. For example, the characters can fall under the effect of an aging spell, so that is quite nasty. In fact, this entire adventure can have some long-term negative effects upon the characters, some positive effects as well, but the party members really have to watch out and take some unsettling decisions when it comes to how to move forward with this adventure. There are some possibilities that they could do some actions that could turn out to be somewhat villainous. So it is all up to the characters. And I think this is also quite interesting if you were playing, for example, in a setting that has some sort of taint mechanic or other type of madness. There are many ways in which you can use additional checks, not only those included in this adventure, but also some that you can think of on your own. There are some interesting elements of randomness in this adventure. I would say that it's actually quite replayable. You could play this with 2 or 3 groups, and besides the normal randomness and improvisation that you would expect of a Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons adventure, there are some things that are randomly determined through the roll of the dice, not only random encounters, but also the identity of the Duke that you are searching for. That is, Duke Berard suffers from a dissociative disorder. He thinks he's someone else. So it is randomly determined who amongst the patients is actually the real Duke Berard. The characters also have to interrogate the different staff members and the patients. They all look quite shady, and many of them are actually dangerous. So it's not going to be easy to find out the real mastermind behind all of this chaos, because Diokar is actually disguising himself as a mental handicap person. The characters could take a look at this person that looks like a normal mentally handicapped member of the staff, and they will have no clue at all, if the game master does things right, that is actually the mastermind of the entire cult of the Lord of the Wood, aka Shuv-Niggurath. I think that's also an important thing. Even if the characters do find out that this Diokar is a cultist of the Lord of the Wood, because the identity itself of the Lord, which is actually Shuv-Niggurath, they will probably have no idea at first what they are going to fight against. As they move through the different encounter sites of the sanitarium, both around it and inside, the characters will notice that there are many maddening effects. You have a lot of different advice and tips on how to play with the players' minds. Maybe they will start to hear some things or see things that aren't there. They will start to suffer all sorts of emotional and mental disturbances. So the characters will have to consider a very dangerous process, which is the lobotomy. Because once they get into contact with probably the most sane member of the asylum, which is the Dr. Alain von Rugal, they will have to decide if they undergo a lobotomy process, because this process has the potential of stealing the characters against the insanity and the nasty magical effects of the asylum and Shub-Niggurath itself. If this operation is successful, the character will become immune from then on to all sorts of mental attacks and anything that can disturb you, your mind or your spirit. However, the character will also become a puppet. You won't be able to act independently. You will always need to follow the orders of someone else. So you have, let's say, 4 party members. Not all of them should undergo this process because they could fall in that risk of becoming puppets. So you're mostly hoping for a partial success during the operation. That you do suffer a bit of damage, points of charisma and intelligence in a drain of sorts. But you will have a bonus saving throw against effects dealing with emotion or mind affecting descriptors. And well, if the operation is not entirely successful, if it results in a failure or a malpractice, you could become a bit more insane and you could even die. So it's definitely something that you do not want to go into lightly, but this will give you an edge against Shub-Niggurath and Diokar and all of the other nasty creatures in the asylum. You also have a timeline with events that happen during different segments of the adventure. So it's going to be quite interesting. As I was telling you, it adds to the replayability of the adventure because sometimes the characters arrive at a particular place and moment when a non-player character is carrying out a specific duty. So they may find out what exactly is going on with a ritual that is about to happen when the stars are right. So the characters will have to consider an important solution, and probably not the most ethical or one in the specific morality of different character classes, and that is arming yourself with an army of lunatics against evil lunatics. Yes, because the process of lobotomy gives you control over the other patients. So the characters, with the help of Dr. Von Rugal, will have to consider using the patients of the asylum in a battle against Diokar and the supernatural creatures that are being gated into this world. And you have a lot of different threats in this adventure. You will have to fight against or avoid different specters, dire wolves, giant rotgrubs, centipede swarms, Migo, werewolves. You will have to experience some mild earth tremors. You will see some supernatural effects related to the nature and the environment itself, and of course you will have to fight the Dark Young of Shub-Niggurath. So what do I think of the Bleak Harvest? This is a great horror-themed adventure. However, keep in mind that this adventure is for mature audiences. This will have the player characters going through some adult situations related to mental illness, nudity, and the player characters may have to commit some questionable acts because many of the patients have already been dominated by Diokar through charm and other means, and some of them are willing sacrifices. They will throw themselves at Shub-Niggurath to empower this terrifying Lovecraftian entity. So it's not out of the possibilities that the characters could decide to kill the patients to cut off that source of nourishment for Shub-Niggurath. I think that it's going to be quite challenging. In fact, total party kills will not be out of the question in this adventure. The party will have to outfight and outthink their enemies. They will have to contend with the different insanity effects due to the marks of Shub-Niggurath placed around the sanitarium. They will have to think if it's in their best interest to undergo the process of lobotomy with the risk of becoming the puppets of one of the other party members. But that could also be a good excuse for future adventures. Maybe, let's say, 2 members of the party undergo the lobotomy and now they feel a bit like marionettes. Not so much, but they have very little when it comes to free will. And maybe they will have to go to this adventure looking for a surgeon or a cleric that can restore their sanity or their capacity of taking decisions. And because the characters also have to take care of the patients, not using them as cannon fodder, or maybe they want to use them as cannon fodder, that could have some implications with all of the relatives of the patients. And if they do not rescue the Duke, maybe they will get in trouble with the king. You have all of the information needed to expand this adventure in any way that you like. Maybe Diokar is not the only cultist of the Lord of the Wood. Maybe Shub-Niggurath has different cells all over the place, and this Dark Mother is about to unleash some sort of catastrophe upon the campaign world. So you could use this adventure to fuel an entire campaign based around the cults of Shub-Niggurath. So I highly recommend that you get this adventure if you're looking for a mature horror adventure with themes of insanity, a great violence, and long-term solutions that could be darker than the threat itself. It all depends on the perspective of the player characters in the game world and how far they are willing to go to stop a threat beyond time and space. Well, thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.